I was diagnosed with NETs in 2011. They did say I was probably carrying the disease for 6 to 8 years without being diagnosed.
Unfortunately, the oncologists at the time there really didn't know anything about the disease. So it was very much going into a pattern there of not being told what the options were.
The day that I got told that I was terminal, Matt and I went home, ordered pizza and watched Survivor. So I just wanted life to continue as normal as possible.
It took around about 5 years to be diagnosed. I was married with 2 daughters who were only 12 and 10 at the time. So to be told that your life was over, there's nothing more we can do for you, it was, it was emotional, and the sad thing was that he never offered me a second opinion.
You know, 2 people could have exactly the same thing with NETs and be totally different. So it's a bit of a guessing game, then.
The Neuroendocrine Foundation was started as a result of my experiences with caring for my late sister Kate.
Sadly, my sister was diagnosed with pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer, and by the time she was diagnosed, it had also spread through to her liver.
And we were, as a family, extremely shocked, shattered really.
So that was back in 2005, and what we found was there was no resources. We didn't have any information. We definitely didn't think that there was anybody else in Australia that may actually have this type of cancer as well.
As the only doctor in the family, I was able to access treatments and therapies that we would not usually be able to if we didn't have that connection.
What about those people who get diagnosed with this cancer and don't know how to navigate the system like we did?
That experience made me realise that there were many thousands of Australians who may not have that ability.
We launched the Neuroendocrine Foundation in October 2009, just prior to my sister passing, so that she could celebrate in that as well.
Mum came charging to the fore with her marketing skills, and I was busily writing constitutions and organising names, and there were a lot of hiccups, but in the end we got there.
The first gala event was incredible. I think we had about 500 people there, which was incredible because nobody ever knew about the Neuroendocrine Foundation. Having Kale there was really special. Yeah, that meant a lot to so many people that she was able to attend. And then moving forward, the other events, she wasn't able to be there, but we could feel her in the room, and I think everyone felt that.
So not long after we launched the Neuroendocrine Foundation at our first gala dinner, we launched the website. It allowed people to search neuroendocrine cancer and find a safe space or an information space actually that was Australia-based as well.
It offered a lot of information, and it was the portal for us to get to places that we couldn't physically get to.
So we really set about putting in place a foundation initially to really support people and to try and give them access to other people and potentially starting support groups.
When I was first diagnosed, I actually was met by a cancer nurse, and I remember her handing me a brochure about the Neuroendocrine Foundation.
And then I just sort of looked it up. Well, not me, I got to be honest, my wife is the researcher in the house. She done some research and found it.
And saw that they had an upcoming support group.
And I thought, wow, this is great. I can talk to some people that know something about NET tumours.
Meeting other patients when I was early in my journey would help me understand what was ahead.
This was just everything that I needed at the time, yeah.
Even 2 years down the track, I feel like I always come away with something. Even though most people don't have the same condition as me, at the end of the day, we're all people with very similar struggles.
Everybody's case is different, but you somehow, I think because it's so limited to the amount of people that actually have it, it's so rare that you have a connection with somebody.
When you meet patients that say, I was diagnosed 12 years ago, that gives people hope. It's not always the case for everybody, and there's been lots of patients that over the years we've lost, and that's a really sad thing because it's like losing a friend.
I'd like to take a moment and thank everybody in the Apple community for the heartfelt support I got too. it really meant a lot.
So 2011 was quite a pivotal year. We unfortunately had the death of Steve Jobs. We say he's the ambassador we never had. And sadly in 2018, we lost the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, to pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer. Like Steve Jobs, Aretha Franklin was able to highlight again what pancreatic neuroendocrine cancer is, and it gave us a platform and it gave us a voice. So we were sad to lose Aretha Franklin, but we were grateful to get it out on the news. We were able to really try and talk about the symptoms, the misdiagnosis, and what NET cancer is.
Sufferers of a little-known cancer that grows slowly and silently are
speaking up to raise awareness about the little-known disease on World NET Cancer Day.
With the formation of the World NET Cancer Day, getting patients around the world and around the country drinking out of coffee cups saying, let's talk about NETs, is something that we are incredibly proud of. And it's really garnered a lot of momentum around the world. One of the key pillars of the Neuroendocrine Foundation is advocacy. Advocating for greater access to treatments, advocating for more research.
Funding of treatments for NET patients, and in particular PRRT, has always been an issue.
So PRT is called peptide receptor radionucleotide therapy, and it's effectively a targeted radiotherapy.
And in 2014, we were faced with the situation that this treatment was going to be unfunded.
So the Consumer Advisory Group went down to Canberra and got into the inner circle to deliver a petition.
Through sheer determination, patient power, signing signatures, we were able to turn that decision around and secure funding for at least our New South Wales patients every year, ongoing.
The Consumer Advisory Group is a group of patients, carers who assist the patients by helping to make a lot of the information really easy to understand in booklets. Some of the people in the Consumer Advisory Group are support group leaders as well around the country.
Like recently I was in Tamworth and I offered to run a support group for all of the Western group. We had people there drive 3.5 hours just to sit for a couple of hours, have a chat, because they had no one else to talk to. You know, they were getting treatment in Newcastle or Sydney and they were only seeing specialists every 6 months, and that person had very little to no knowledge of their disease and they felt lost. So it was more just to be able to have share a story and tell them that we're there to help. So we've got Kate, a fingerly person, and she's just inundated, which is why we do need to find extra support.
We have almost 10,000 people in Australia diagnosed with NETs, so I'm responsible for really all of the patient information and support aspects of the organisation. So I'm on the end of the line, I take phone calls, text messages, Facebook messages. We run a large Facebook group and a network of face-to-face support groups and peer support programs around Australia, so I'm overseeing all of that.
We need specialist NET cancer nurses around the country so that we can build better outcomes in the future.
Access to someone like Kate is absolutely fabulous.
One nurse between so many of us is pretty tight.
When you don't know what's happening, when you're asking questions and you can see that they don't know the answer, there's nothing more frustrating than that.
Why should people with an uncommon cancer be disadvantaged just because their cancer's not one of the common ones? It just breaks my heart. It's just not fair.
When you think that there's about 10,000 patients in Australia with neuroendocrine cancer and just one NET nurse, and they're so important to help those people through what is a really tough journey, how can that be? So when we had the opportunity to fund the Control NETs program, it was a bit of a no-brainer to us. There was no reason not to back an organisation that truly delivers.
The Control NETs trial is the only trial of its kind in the world. This area is really in need of a lot of support, a lot of financial support, a lot of research.
The major source of funding for that trial was from the Neuroendocrine Foundation, and it's going to be an incredibly important and potentially practice-changing trial.
And it's very difficult to fund that, and unfortunately it has to be funded by hospitals' internal funds. Otherwise patients would have to pay a large amount of money to get access to that. We're fighting with the government to try and get that funded by the federal government.
So we made that our modus operandi until we finally secured funding for hospitals at Peter MacCallum in Melbourne, South Australia and hospitals in Queensland.
Fully funding a clinical trial is pretty much unheard of by a patient organisation, and the Planet Registry and Patient Reported Outcomes app is something that we are incredibly proud of. It's world class. We've been presenting it overseas. It hasn't been done before.
The Planet app is a real life diary for the patients to enter information about what happens in their day. And with that, we'll be able to see if there are any patterns and if there's ways that we can actually improve their day and their care.
Over the next 10 years, I would love the Unicorn Foundation to expand its net nurse services to every state and territory, and to improve awareness and education amongst the Australian community about neuroendocrine cancers.
A lot of our patients have suffered through long journeys just to get the right diagnosis, let alone get into the right treatment.
Greater education of medical staff, greater education of patients.
I want more funding. I want the governments to give more money, because we can only do so much without government funding.
And to set a standard for all patients who have neuroendocrine tumours can aspire to, provide a cohesive network basically for neuroendocrine patients.
I think we can make a major difference to the care of patients in Australia, but more importantly, influence behaviours in the world.
I think we'll get there. We'll make even bigger strides.
The future, we hope, is that the Unicorn Foundation will be able to deliver better outcomes for patients so that we ultimately find a cure.